Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Theosophia Esoteric Studies, I'm proud to bring you Edgar Casey's ARE of NYC with Lynne Salomon MIceli. Greetings, Lynne. How are you?
Greetings. Thank you. I'm very well. Thanks, Hercules.
Thank
So
you.
my guest tonight is Kathy Lamm, intuitive guide, artist, and author of Leave the Light On, an alchemist guide for turning trauma into a sacred gift. So welcome, Kathy.
Wow, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Kathy's work, I'm going to read you a little bit of her bio. Kathy's work as an intuitive guide, artist, and writer sits at the intersection of healing, spirituality, and creativity. A survivor of profound childhood trauma, she dedicated her life to understanding and teaching the alchemical process that transforms pain into purpose. Her journey from a girl who used a sketchbook to hide from the world to a woman who uses it as a portal for healing is the foundation of her work. She's the creator of the internationally recognized Angel Memorial Portraits, a service she has offered pro bono to hundreds of grieving families around the world. In this sacred work, Kathy channels the spirits of deceased loved ones to create healing works of art that provide comfort to their families. Her mission is to destigmatize the conversation around trauma and offer an empowering paradigm for survivors, framing their sensitivity not as a flaw, but as the source of their greatest strength. So, Kathy, I was really intrigued when I learned about your book because years ago, somewhere, I read a statement about how the trauma of abuse in children can be the catalyst for awakening psychic abilities. But that was all. I never saw any examples of it. I never saw any stories about it. I never heard anything about it until your book.
Y- Yeah, actually, there's been a few studies done on it. There were some done back in the 80s that I know of, but I know the most recent study was done in 2021 from Cameron Wade, and they actually did a survey study where they interviewed 227 people and they asked them specific questions about cognitive and precognitive abilities. And the ones who had ACEs, adverse childhood experiences and trauma, scored much higher on the precognitive task. And, it really proved to show that that dissociation that children go through and learn as a survival skill really helps develop those precognitive abilities.
I wasn't aware of that. So thank you. I learned something from you tonight. So in your childhood, your father was in the Navy and very often away at sea. Your biological mother, it sounds like, was suffering from depression and maybe other issues. She
Mhm.
neglected and then abandoned you and your siblings. Eventually, you had a stepmother who just seemed to be mean to you most of the time. I'm, I, I know this has to be hard to talk about, but what do you feel comfortable sharing here about your childhood?
So a lot of it I did share in the book, and very openly I was able to share it. And I think the reason that I can talk about it so easily now is because of the years of, work that I did on forgiveness. I mean, that was really the biggest thing was forgiveness. And through the forgiveness process, you begin to see the other person, you begin to see their capacity. And what support systems they had, what teachings they had, where they came from in their background. So it really gave me a different perspective into who they were and understanding that honestly, they probably felt like they did the best that they could with where they were and where they were at. With that being said, it shaped me to be who I am today. So, in the end, I'm extremely grateful for all of the experiences I've had, whether we want to call them bad or good or, adverse. I'm still thankful for where I am today.
That's a pretty enlightened way of viewing your past.
Mhm.
For children like yourself who've experienced abuse, psychologists use the term vigilant or hypervigilant because these kids are extremely tuned into the body language, the facial expressions, the tone of voice of usually it's the adults around them who they're alert for signs of danger. But now we're talking about that vigilance going beyond the five physical sentences. So
Right.
senses. So
Mhm.
how did you experience that?
Sure. So, when we talk about that hypervigilance and we talk about, as a child, um, when children learn these things, they also don't understand there's a ceiling of saying, okay, well, you can't go beyond that. So, when you're in the environment where you are surviving, when you're in a survival mechanism, you say, oh, well, I can't travel outside of my body. No, you don't really have that thought. You think, okay, if I can project my energy into the other room, I can see what other people are doing. I can see, whether they're awake or whether they're sleeping or whether they're doing something else or what their thoughts might be, that I have the ability to even go into their thoughts. So, as a child growing up and being in a situation where every single moment was a protective one and that of survival, you don't have limitations. You expand and you go beyond. And I learned that I could leave my body, that I could astral travel essentially into another room, that I could bilocate. I also learned that I could read energy fields, that I could actually see them, that I could see auras around people's body. And I knew that if their aura was compressed close to their body, that they weren't really in a good mood, that their energy was very shut off, that I wasn't going to get a good response from them. Yet when their aura was more expanded and light and airy, then I knew that, I was a little bit safer and that I could be around them in a more safe environment. And I actually remember as a kid sitting in the back of the church and watching energy fields and energy moving from one person to another as they interacted and connected. And it was sort of like a little game for me when I was younger to be able to just watch that energy move.
So you describe when the abuse was happening to you, leaving your body in order to not to experience it. So basically, going into an altered state
Right.
or going someplace else.
Yeah,
Which
anywhere else. I was going anywhere else, and I really learned that I didn't need to be in my body. Um, and I think that I learned that actually shortly after childbirth. I had contracted spinal meningitis when I was born, and I was in and out of this realm several times during that experience. But I learned that, okay, I could leave my body, I could go into spirit. I don't necessarily have to be here. Now, did I have the words for it then that I was going into spirit? No, I just knew that I was no longer in my body and I was able to disconnect. Now, how do I use that today? As a medium, as a channel, I'm able to use that ability to allow other energies to come in and share information freely through me because I have the ability to step aside and no longer be present. Other people have recognized that by saying, you know, that's an expression that my grandmother would have made. You look just like her, or she would have twisted her head that way and winked her eye like that, and it's just things that I don't necessarily have control over. So I know it's not me that is in there. So essentially, my body is used to be able to give messages, whether of spirit or whether of other people.
so you have really alchemized these terrible situations into this ability to be of service to others.
Mhm.
At some points in your childhood, you experienced different kinds of abuse and neglect, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. You made a decision not to state the identity of the sexual abuser in your book. Why did you make that choice?
Well, the story wasn't about them. It was about me. And, we all go through situations. And, was I victimized? Absolutely. Was it a horrible thing for a little girl to go through? Absolutely. But the story is what I did with it afterwards. And that's really where the story needed to start and where the story needed to be told. I don't consider myself a hero in the journey. I consider myself a survivor, and that's the story that I need to continue to tell.
It's important to see it that way. I was impressed with how beautifully written your book is, and also you did the illustrations yourself, and they are
Mhm.
beautiful. And also with the language, how evocative it is. Like you really, I really found myself seeing these things that you're describing. Particularly, it seems like you spent more time on the places where you felt safe and really describing them,
True.
like your grandmother's farm and Aunt Bee's house. That was very striking to me. Aunt Bee's home.
Yeah.
She seemed to be a real character, but in a good way.
Yeah.
And it also evoked my own childhood experiences where I visited older relatives, although that wasn't yours were all in the South, which has a certain flavor to it. My experiences were in New England, but some things were the same. So getting to the visual aspect of it, um,
Mhm.
there were some things that you did in childhood that created a kind of safe space for you. And you talk about sketching most of all. Can
Mhm.
you talk about that?
Sure. So, I want to go back to Aunt Bee's house just a little bit if I can, because you're right. It's such a visceral feeling to actually to be there through the storytelling. And I really tried in my writing to do the same thing that I do in illustration, just to be very detailed and create that feeling within someone as if they were actually there. There were actually a lot of symbolisms within Aunt Bee's house. I didn't know it at the time, but she was an extensive hoarder. And, she had surrounded herself with this wall of protection. And it really goes to show you that trauma is ancestral. It is passed on from generation to generation. And I wasn't aware of it at the time. But all of that stuff that she had collected in her house was a trauma response. And you could see it in the beautiful furnishings and the little intricate you know fixtures that were on the shelves and the plastic flowers and just trying to make the home very beautiful, but yet they were all dust covers and they were moldy and the cabinets were blocking out the windows so you couldn't see. There was no sunlight in there. And, it was that flirting between being seen and not being seen. And that is really an underlining theme in the book is, just that flirtation with, I don't want to be seen, but I really want to be seen. And I think that that is also a trauma response that most people have. It's like a commonality for that. So, you know, illustrating that through storytelling, I think is very important. Even the dishes on the counter, you said the bowls stacked up on the counter that were ready to fall at any minute if someone shook it the wrong way. Well, we think about ourselves like that too. We create this stack of things upon ourselves and we think, oh, if the littlest thing should shift us off balance, then we could just collapse. Or even the succotash soup that was there, taking all these different ingredients that may not make sense, but put them into something and you make this wonderful creation, this stew that everybody loved. So,
And in the book, you didn't like the look of it at first. You thought it
oh
looked
no,
awful, but you loved it once you tasted
I
it.
did.
It's interesting while you're talking about this, about your Aunt Bee's house and how she was also a survivor, and she responded by she had all this clutter and she had furniture blocking the windows, which is really interesting. But you have this background behind you that is wide open to the world, and
Oh, yeah.
that's kind of beautiful. It's
Yeah, it
really
is. I think that it's all about bringing light. The book is Leave the Light On. So it's all about bringing light into the world as well. One of the things that I've always tried to do with my illustrations is that, is to bring people in through the eyes and open up that space of light to allow them to go into seeing within the soul of the individuals that are there. Now, when I started my angel portraits, I drew all of these pictures with no backgrounds, and then I winged them all, and they became these glorious angels. And so that in itself was turning on the light, right? It was turning on the light to that angelic field. And you had asked me about drawing when I was little. And I would sit on the couch and completely disappear, like zone out, that, all right, I'm drawing and nothing else around me is going on. And I was able to escape within that space. I think that it was probably my first form of meditation, really, was drawing. And it helps me today because I can be in an auditorium filled with 40 other readers at a conference, and I'm able to connect with the one person in front of me, and I'm able to give them 100% of my energy, and I'm able to read them specifically. And I think that really trained me to be able to have that hyper focus as well.
Your book, you describe these childhood experiences, and then you describe, not surprisingly, this kind of self-destructive behavior in adolescence. You describe a scene where you're an adolescent or a young adult and you're in a cemetery late at night in a dangerous, very dangerous part of town, and you're yelling, "Here I am, come and get me."
Hmm.
And then, which is, which just to hear that, just to read that kind of creates anxiety. Then your story kind of skips to a point in your adult life where you're happily married, you're happy in your work, you're leading a healthy life. What got you from point A to point B, from
Oh,
that,
yes.
very
Well,
self-destructive place to the happy life?
yeah. Well, I have to tell you, it was just as instantaneous as that. So I met my husband when I was 19 years old. Within, 3 years, I had twins, and I instantly knew that I was the architect of my destiny. And that was it. I had made a promise to my 9-year-old self that I was never going to allow my family or my children to go through the things that I went through. And I instantly changed my self-destructive behavior to that behavior of creation as a mother, as a wife, as a family. And so it really was that big of a shift instantaneously, and I left that person behind.
That's actually pretty amazing. It's, People spend years and years in therapy trying to change their lifestyles, and you just did it. You just
Yeah.
did it. I guess being married and having children was the
Yeah.
catalyst for a complete change of mindset.
Finding my soulmate, I think, was the key, I instantly fell in love, and I didn't even really believe in falling in love, but there he was. So that did it for me.
You're lucky, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, 36 years we've been together now, so. Oh, don't add those numbers together to see how old I am, please.
Um, but you do talk about in your book about we'll backtrack a little bit to
Okay.
other things that happen, but you do talk a little bit in your book about things that you do now, like using a weighted blanket at night and building a
Hmm.
kind of a structure of pillows around yourself, and how yeah, and how being awoken suddenly can be a momentary return to the trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the other thing that I have to also normalize trauma. We all have it. We have all experienced trauma in one way or another. And some of us believe that we can get rid of it, that it goes away. It doesn't. It's a part of us. But what we can do is we can learn to live with it, and we can choose to deal with it in a different way. One of the things that I talked about in the book was, there was a ritual where I was woken up every night around 2:30 or 3 in the morning, as a child. And as an adult, I would take that as my witching hour, and I would do drawings, or I would do meditations, or I would do, other kinds of writing, or things like that. I turned it into a creative time in my experience. And so we can transmute that energy but it's still there. It's still there. It's just different energy. Even wrapping myself in a cocoon of pillows offers me such comfort and joy. Um, but on another side of it, could it be that I'm building a wall, a barrier around myself, a protection? Sure, but do I need it? I'm laying in bed with my husband. I consider it very comfortable. But those trauma things are still there.
Yeah, you talk about if somebody touches you, wakes you, or even looks
Oh,
at
yeah.
you.
Looking at me is the thing. I'm sound asleep, and if someone looks at me while I'm asleep, I have a visceral response. It's something that I cannot help. I just instantly will sit up, wake up, suck my breath in, and scare whoever it is that woke me, that looked at me. So it is, it is something that I can't control. But yeah, it is definitely still something that stays with me, a visceral response.
Right. I remember someone once saying that these kinds of experiences cannot be like surgically removed.
Mm-mm.
You have to, as you say, transform them. I think the uh, analogy you use of alchemy is really helpful. Taking something awful and turning it into something beautiful.
Yeah.
So speaking of beautiful, in the book you talk about that, about the angel portraits that you mentioned before, and how you had them up on the wall, but at a certain point they were just portraits, and then you took them
Hmm.
down and put wings on them,
Yeah.
and you decided to enter an art show. Was it an
Yes,
art show?
yes. I entered an art show. And it was actually right after Aunt Bee's death. And her death was a little bit of a catalyst for me. I walked into a room where I had all of these pictures hung that were just portraits, pulled them off the wall and started winging them, and then said, you know what, I'm going to enter this art show. And I remember walking around the field the day everyone was setting up. Everyone was setting up all of their stuff. And I was walking around, and my husband was with me, and I just started crying. I'm like, I am not good enough to be here with all of these amazing artists. And I was really feeling like extremely vulnerable and not worthy at all to be there. So I sat up my booth and I put up all of my pictures, and I sat behind the booth, and I had, like canvas walls up, but I had a little hole that I was peeking through, and people would come in and they would start to connect with them, and they would start to tell me these stories. And they would say, "Oh, that looks just like my mother," or "This reminds me of my son," and they would cry, and they would have this experience with the angels. So it really became obvious to me that they served a bigger purpose than just drawings that I did. So, in one of my shows, one of my very first shows, I had someone come up to me and say, have you ever done a memorial portrait? And I said, no, I haven't, but I'm not opposed to doing one. And she said, well, I had this friend who lost her baby from SIDS, and the anniversary's coming up. I would really like to gift her this. Um, so I agreed, and I did this drawing of the baby. And it was an amazing emotional experience that I had, where I was getting ready to give this drawing to the person to give to the mother. And I was unpacking my computer bag at work. I still have a full-time job. I don't just do all of this stuff. Um, and this little light came out of my computer bag, and it just started moving all around. It was like self-propelled. And I was like, what in the world? And it caught my eye so much that I couldn't stop looking at it. And it finally just blinked away. And then I just got this message from this baby's soul for its mother that I was able to pass on. And that really started my journey with, when I do the angel memorial portraits, it's not only the drawing, but it's also about connecting with that soul and then sharing any messages that I have for the parents of that. Now, I spent a good about 6 years doing those portraits. I've done hundreds of them all over the world. but it's not something that I have a lot of time to do anymore, because I'm doing so many other things. Maybe I'll get back to it at some point in my life, but right now it's a little on pause, but I am so thankful to have been able to help as many families as I did with that.
And in that first show that you participated in, that you said you felt not sure that your work was good enough and you felt unworthy, didn't you win like an award for
I
the best
did, I did, I did. I won the
best in show kind of thing?
yeah, yeah, best in shows. So yeah, I couldn't believe it, right? Like
So,
who knew? But
well,
yes,
so
it was
that's a
wonderful.
real affirmation, isn't it?
It really was. It was the confirmation that I needed to keep going. And so that year, I think I probably did 11 outdoor shows that first year. So I just kept going and going and going, and it was great. Something else happened to me that was very strange too during those shows. I met my first Earth Angel, and I would have to say that I've met a few of them, but I know he was an Earth Angel. He came up to me and we were talking about one of my pictures, and then all of a sudden he just started telling me, "Oh, you want to know about meditation?" And then he started telling me how to meditate. And then he's like, "Oh, you need to look at sacred geometry, and you need to go down this path, and here's a book for you to read." And he must have talked for like 20 minutes straight without me saying a word, answering all of these questions that he said I had that I never asked, but really set me on my path of where I needed to be and the direction that I needed to be going in. And I tell you, meditation is now fundamental for me. It is the foundation of everything that I do. It's the foundation of all my teachings, all my readings. And it was because of him, this stranger that I, got this information from, got a hug, and never saw him again.
It's kind of like he gave you a reading.
Yes, he did. And one of many, I would say, that I met throughout my experiences doing shows. I would just have people come to me and they would give me the message that I needed right at that moment. And then they would leave and I wouldn't see them again.
Had one or two experiences like that too, but it's it's always a very special experience when it happens. So let's talk about your work now. You do psychic readings. You're also a life coach.
Yes. Yes. So, and all right, I'm just going to say this straight out. So, another thing that comes with hypervigilance and trauma is we are overdoers. We overdo. So, I'm a medium, I'm a psychic. I do those readings. I'm also a life coach. I'm a celebrant, so I marry people. I'm an ordained minister. I am a clinical hypnotherapist, and I'm also, marketing. I'm a marketing professional. So I have like all of these different things and I'm an artist. So I have all these things that I do that I'm such a high achiever at trying to do all of them. And I think I do fairly successful. I also teach meditation, and I teach developmental classes for people looking to expand their own consciousness and their own abilities. Um, so yeah, I do all of those things. And now I'm an author and I'm a published author. So there we go.
And
Add one
you
more
didn't
thing.
you didn't mention past life regressionist.
Oh yes, and I do past life regressions with Edgar Casey. Edgar Casey had talked a lot about the Akashic records, right? I knew nothing about the Akashic records. Do you want to hear Edgar Casey's story real quick?
Sure.
So I used to walk. I used to work at the ARE, but this was probably 5, 6 years before I worked at the ARE. I would go to the Labyrinth in Virginia Beach on 67th Street. There's a beautiful labyrinth there in front of the ARE, and I would walk that labyrinth and, um, just meditate, do the meditation, whatever. And I was walking, and I was like, I can see dead people all the time, and Edgar Casey, why haven't you come to me? And I'm thinking, and he of course doesn't appear. I'm waiting for him to appear magically. And I look up at the cafe. If you know the ARE building, the cafe, all of the windows were foggy except one. And behind it was Edgar Casey's photo. And I just chuckled out loud. I'm like, well, there he is. And look at him showing me himself. But in those walks, I did learn that, the Akashic Records was where I was getting the information that I was getting, that I was channeling. So going into the Akashic field, the all-knowing field, to be able to find the information, to be able to connect with the souls and the spirit, to pull in the information for the person that I'm doing the reading for. That's how we all, as psychics, intuition, synchronicities, everything, that's how we get the information. And every person has the ability to do it.
Right. Edgar Casey said that everyone was psychic. But let me just backtrack one bit because I usually do this at the beginning of the interview, but I wasn't sure we were going to really talk about Edgar Casey. So just very briefly, in case there's anybody watching this video who doesn't know who Edgar Casey is, he was an American psychic born in 1887, died in 1945. He gave 14,000 readings. Initially, they were all on health issues. He could, if things that the doctors couldn't diagnose, he could say what it was, or he could give cures for things to improve health situations. But then the readings expanded into reincarnation, spiritual development, past lives, um, meditation, prayer, ancient cultures, inventions, future prophecies. It kind of goes everywhere.
Mhm.
And the ARE, which Kathy has been mentioning, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, is the organization formed to preserve and share the KC legacy. So I just,
Mhm.
I usually do that at the beginning, but I wasn't necessarily sure we were going to talk about Edgar Casey. So I, I'm always amazed that there are people out there who don't know who Edgar Casey is, and some of
Yeah, me
the
too.
younger New Age folks.
Me too. I connected with Casey when I was 14. I was actually dating a guy who was really into Egypt. So we would go to the library and just pull down the books and pull down the readings on Egypt. And it was very fascinating, and to be connected to him at such a young age. I really felt like there was a kindred spirit.
And we should also say that now when you're talking about the library, are you talking about the library at ARE or just any
Yes.
library? Yeah,
No,
yeah.
the library at the ARE, which houses all of the readings, as well as the largest library of well, you can say it is the
It's the
largest library
largest
next to the Vatican.
next to the Vatican. It's the largest metaphysical library
Yes,
in the world.
metaphysical. Thank you very much. Missed that word. Yeah.
Right. And in front of the one of the buildings on the ARE campus, there's a very nice labyrinth, which is what Kathy was saying. Um,
Hmm.
she was doing when she kind of tuned into Casey.
Hmm.
So you have also now written a follow-up book to um, the original one with a 90-day trauma recovery program. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so the I'll show you a picture. I'll show you real quick. So this is the journal. And so the journal is really taking the book, the first part of the book, mainly the first part of the stories, and breaking it down into daily prompts for journaling that'll allow you to go through some childhood trauma recovery work. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same kind of trauma that I experienced, but as I mentioned to you in the beginning, we've all experienced trauma one way or another. And this is a way to excavate that. It is a way to dig deeper into that trauma. And so I am doing I just started actually a 90-day program where I'm doing one-on-one coaching using that book and my Leave the Light On book as companions to do that excavation. I think it's that work is very, very important. It's always important to get to the root cause of it because if we don't, we keep creating the same patterns over and over again. We keep coming back to the same lessons. So our goal in this life is to learn the lessons and move on. If we don't get to the root cause of where they started, then we just keep repeating the same patterns.
Going back to the first book, the first part of the book is autobiographical. And I
Mhm.
really think, again, talking about how evocative it was for me, I told you before, I think it should be a movie.
Mm.
But your second part includes practices and exercises. Um, you're kind of designing them for people who experience childhood trauma, but as you're saying, everybody has had trauma. So can we talk about some of those exercises, the things that you're
Sure.
that it seems like that part of the book is almost like the second book is came out of those in a way, it sounds like.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because you started telling people, sharing with people ways to work through
Hmm.
um, those experiences and help themselves to go forward, and then you develop the 90-day process. But about the first book, can we talk about some of these things like grounding and shielding and
Sure.
so forth?
Sure. So I actually started, doing small group work. I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, where we would just, I would invite people together once a week and we would do meditation practices. And through that, I learned, they learned, that different things and questions came up, on grounding and, protecting ourselves. And why do I take on everybody's energy around me? And how can I make sure that I don't do that? And is this mine or is this not mine? And and then the grounding, I mean, that's extremely important. A lot of us, want to leave our body as we've talked about, right? But it's important in this life experience that we stay in our body to have the experiences that we do. So, returning to your breath is a simple, simple way, or any of your autonomic systems. You can begin to listen to the blood flowing in your body, and it'll pull you back in and it'll ground you. You can imagine roots growing out of the bottom of your feet, going into the earth and connecting to the earth, and that will ground you. A lot of us want to escape and go into spirit all the time, and we can't do that. So we have to stay grounded at a level point where we have intuition and we have spirit information, but we're also here in the real world doing the things that we need to do. Um, and the chakras are a lot about that. So I do a lot of work with chakras too, and helping people move through trauma within their chakras, and um, some of the exercises that, are in the book, like grounding, creating a shield around your body, you know. I remember when I first started, like really bringing my gifts in, I would go to the grocery store and I would pick up everything. It was like I was just a trash dump. I would just walk around, and if I looked at somebody, all of a sudden I got everything. I got, the fight they had with their husband, their kids being bad, they had no money in the bank. I mean, I would get it all. And then I would be like, ooh, oh my goodness. And it was a lot on me. And I had to learn how to put up a force field around me so that I didn't get that energetic drain every time I was out in public. And, God forbid that I would go into a place that I was unfamiliar with and it instantly became an energy suck for me. Like if I would go into, say, a local watering hole and a lot of people go there and, they're maybe not on the best of their time or, they're down on their luck, whatever. And so all of that energy I'm picking up and I'm getting, and I have to learn how to, manage my own energy. And first of all, not go into places like that because I know that I pick that up very easily. But I also need to be able to create a shield around myself that when I walk into that environment, I'm not taking it on. So that's a lot of the meditation and stuff that I talk about. This is also a protective mechanism, like so taking that instinct of survival protection and transmuting it into a way of holding your own sacred power is a way that we alchemize that energy.
You talk a lot about creating sacred, not sacred, safe spaces or
Hmm.
sanctuary within yourself, or um, I guess that's part of the process of going into meditation is creating something safe
Yes.
that you can
Yeah.
go into.
Yeah, it is. Meditation is an extremely safe place for me. I also have constant conversations with my guides. I know who they are. I talk to them all the time. You know, I always check in. I know that I now know it's taken me a long time, but I now know that I'm fully protected and supported and that I always will be. And I just need to ask and be reassured of that. So, we all have that same guidance system around us. It's tapping into it and then trusting it.
It's important.
Yeah.
So, and you also talk about cord cutting in the part about, I thought it was interesting that you used the term managing empathy.
Hmm.
Um, you talk about cord cutting. Can you talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit too?
Yeah, so cord cutting is important. So a lot of times we have relationships with people. When we have a relationship, like you and I right now, we're having this conversation, and we are creating an energetic cord between the two of us. When we leave each other's presence, that cord will still exist and energy will still pass back and forth between us. If you think about long-lasting relationships that maybe people are in and they, get divorced or, their parents and they leave or they have some kind of separation that needs to be a healthy separation, but yet there's a lot of negative energy that is still passing back and forth through that cord. It's really important for you to release it and cut the cord. Send that energy back to them with love. That's really important. And then fill yourself with love in the space where that energy was holding you before. And once you do that, you can still interact with the person. They just don't have the same energetic pull on you anymore. We have positive and negative cords. I have cords with my children that I will always want to keep and always want to keep them sacred. That is like, the thing that tells me if something's up with them. I just automatically know it's because of that energetic cord that I'm connected to. A lot of my clients say this too. They always say, well, you called me just at this moment when I was having like a nervous breakdown or when I really needed to talk to you most. It's because of that energetic cord that we share that I know that I'm sort of alerted to. So those are positive energetic cords. When we talk about cord cutting, we need to make sure that we cut the cords that are draining energy from us that don't serve us.
Can you describe that process a little bit? Or
So I use Archangel Michael. You can use Archangel Michael. You can call him in and ask him to use his big sword and to cut the cord. You can also visualize it yourself and you can cut it with a knife or a sword, or you can just cut it energetically. Again, if you think about it as a cord and you send the cord back to them, and then to keep your part of it and compress it into you and fill that space, because it's important that you fill the space back with love. It's also important that you send it back to them with love, because that's sort of what seals and binds it, right, in the cord cutting. And that is what releases the energy between the two and allows healing to happen.
um, where do you think you're going from here? Do you have you said that you might go back to doing angel portraits, or you probably will at some point. You have the 90-day program that you've started.
Mhm.
Where do you think you go next from there?
So I'm writing. I'm
You're
writing.
writing
I'm
again.
doing more writing. And I may end up turning the first part of the book and more stories into an actual memoir. And looking at what I can do with that. Who knows? I might make a movie out of it. We'll see, a pilot. Um, but I think writing is where I'm at right at this moment, is storytelling. It's very important to me. It is sort of like an illustration of words. And so that's where my art and craft is at the moment. I'm also still drawing. I have my work in a local gallery. Um, and I still draw all the time too. Um, So, and I still do marketing and I still do hypnosis and I still do readings and I still do all the things. And I'm a grandmother and I'm getting ready to have another grandchild. So, that too, just celebrating life and where I'm at the moment. But I do know that I'm open. I'm open to wherever the journey wants to take me from here.
Hope it takes you to wonderful places.
Oh, well, thank you. It already has.
Is there anything else you want to share? You'd like to say to whoever's watching this
No,
this
I think the
interview?
biggest thing is just people need to understand that, trauma is a part of who we are. And it's okay. It's okay to admit it. It's okay to say, I was victimized or I was hurt. Um, we don't live there. We don't have to live there. We can transmute that energy. We can get support. We can get help. There is help and support out there. Um, some people choose to stay there, and it's not necessary. You don't have to. And trauma is normal, and I would just like to neutralize it. That is my ultimate goal.
And you said destigmatize it as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
destigmatize it. Right. I think it's okay for all of us to talk about it.
It is okay for all of us to talk about it. So, if people wanted to contact you, if they want a reading with you or a life coaching, or if they want to do the 90-day program,
Mhm.
um, what do they do?
So the best way to find me is my name. That's it. KathyLamb.com.
So we should spell it Kathy
Kathy dot, or I'm sorry, KathyLamm.com. KathyLamb.com.
And once again, Kathy's book is titled Leave the Light On, An Alchemist's Guide for Turning Trauma into a Sacred Gift. And I imagine they can get that at Amazon and various other places.
Yeah, it's on barnesandnoble.com, it's on Amazon, and it's on Ingram.
And then the second book is The Alchemist's Journal, Transmuting Trauma into Light. And that is the one that's the 90-day guided trauma recovery program. It's like a workbook, right?
Yeah, it's a workbook, and actually in the book, it gives you prompts, like daily prompts to be able to, that is really taken from the first part of my story, not the last part of the book, from Leave the Light On. And it really prompts you to go back in time, go back in your childhood and kind of excavate all of that.
Excavate is an interesting word for that.
Mhm.
Thank you, Kathy. This has really been interesting. I've learned a lot, and I do hope that your continued journey will be continue to be creative and rich and wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you, Lynn, so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Hercules. Thank you very much.
And thank you both for another insightful, deep, and thoughtful episode of Sophia Esoteric Studies.
Thank you, Hercules.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish you well in the days ahead, and may all your new projects come to fruition.
Thank you.
Thank you.